Things haven't been perfect in my marriage for a while, but I never seriously thought it had gotten to the point of infidelity. Even worse, I never imagined that it would be a call from a concerned neighbor, my wife's friend, that exposed what was really going on. My wife, Irene, 29 female, and I, 30 male, have been married for 4 years. Most of the time, things are great, though there's been a little bit of friction lately. It was never anything major, just some bad moods and quiet days here and there that made things a little tense sometimes. We both work a lot, so I always thought it was just exhaustion. I knew I was guilty of being a little irritable at the end of a long day, so I thought it was the same for her too. Irene is good friends with an older neighbor of ours, Beth. I'm not sure exactly how old she is, but I'd guess she's in her 60s or early 70s. She lived in the same building as us, but she was a few floors down. My wife ran into her in the elevator pretty often, and she started talking to her because she was lonely. Eventually, they got close and became friends. Beth never said it, but it was obvious that she appreciated the company, because she was always looking for excuses to come over or invite Irene to her place. I found it just a tiny bit annoying, but Irene thought it was cute. I could see how she'd think it was cute, even if I found it a little inconvenient sometimes. But I was glad to see Irene doing something so nice for an older person. About a week ago, Beth told us some good news. Her son had just had a baby, so she was a grandma now. I was happy for her, but Irene was ecstatic. She squealed and hugged Beth tightly. She told us that she wanted to visit her son to help with the baby. The problem was that Beth had a lot of plants and some fish in her apartment. They'd all need daily care while she was gone. She hadn't even asked if Irene could help before she shot in and said she'd be delighted to look out for them while Beth was gone. That irked me because it would have been nice for her to let me know she wanted to make that kind of commitment, but ultimately, it wasn't a big deal. Irene went over to her place and Beth showed her what needed to be done and how to do it. Irene took her house-sitting duties seriously. She was over there every day, feeding the fish and watering the plants. She told me that she'd even thrown in some cleaning that Beth hadn't been able to get around to because of her age. I thought it was admirable. She'd come home from work, freshen up, and then head to Beth's apartment. It was heartwarming to see how far she was ready to go to help out a neighbor. And then I found out she was doing a little more than helping out with chores. I was at work when I got a call from Beth one day. I was surprised to hear her on the other end because I was pretty sure she didn't have my phone number. I was friendly with her, but not to the point of us having conversations when my wife wasn't around. She asked if Irene was around, so I initially assumed that she might have tried to call Irene but couldn't reach her for some reason, so she decided to go through me. When I told her I was at work, she said she didn't want to upset me while I was busy, and asked me to call her back as soon as I was off work. But before I got home, she said it was important. I got curious, and I asked her to tell me right then, but she insisted that I needed to wait until I was done at work. I was a little annoyed because now I had that on my mind all day. I've always hated it when someone says we need to talk because you know it's bad news, and you end up worrying all day. We had a bit of a soft spot for Beth though, so I didn't hold it against her. But when the end of my shift came, I called her immediately. She thanked me for calling her back and said she needed to tell me something important. I was nervous, and I felt like a sinking feeling in my gut as she explained what had happened. A few years ago, her son had given her a hidden camera to keep in her apartment. He told her it was for her protection, because he was uneasy about her living alone at her age. She explained that she rarely checked the camera, but she'd missed her fish and wanted to see them. She explained that she didn't know much about computers, but her son had noticed something odd while he was going through the camera footage. He'd seen 2 people entering the house together. Beth explained the house-sitting arrangement to him and told him that it was probably me and Irene coming in together. When she put on her glasses and took a closer look, she realized it was Irene and another man. She paused for a moment, and I felt like my world was falling apart around me. My mind was searching for anything that wasn't infidelity. Like maybe Irene was taking her duties as a house sitter a step too far and brought a repairman in or something. But I knew that wasn't the case because Beth sounded disappointed, and she wouldn't have called me if it had been something normal. She said she'd debated with herself for a while before telling me. She didn't want to upset me, but she wanted to know the truth too. I asked if she could send me the video. It's not that I didn't trust her, but her son didn't know what Irene looked like. And Beth's eyesight wasn't great. It was possible that there was a mistake. Maybe they were looking at a video from another day. I knew it was a reach, but I let myself hold on to that delusion for a little longer. Beth said she didn't know how to do it herself, but she'd get her son to send it to me. I sat in my car for 10 minutes while I waited, with all sorts of possibilities running through my head. Finally, I got the notification I'd been waiting for. Beth's son had emailed me a link to download the raw footage. It took me 5 whole minutes before I could work up the nerve to watch the video. It was grainy, but it was clear enough to tell who was in the frame. Irene walked in through the door and started watering the plants and feeding the fish. She sat on the couch for about 15 minutes typing on her phone. Then she got up to open the door for a man I didn't know. They shared a quick hug and then a kiss. He whispered something and they both laughed, and they disappeared into Beth's bedroom. They came out of the room 20 minutes later, and he walked right out. Irene sat on the couch for a few minutes, straightening herself up. She spent a lot of time on her hair, looked in her phone's camera, and then left. I replayed the video multiple times, looking as closely as I could for cuts or signs of edited footage. I knew that was a waste of time. There was no way and no reason that Beth would have doctored footage. I was looking for real proof of my wife's infidelity. Even worse, Beth's son had sent 5 videos in total. That was a minimum of 5 times that they'd met up at her place to sleep together, to cheat. I had the footage right in front of me, but I still found it hard to believe. I felt paralyzed, but I knew I couldn't sit in my car gawking at my phone forever. I called Beth back and thanked her for telling me. Then I asked her for the instructions for the fish and plants, and I told her I'd take over until I spoke to Irene. That was the longest drive home of my life. I bounced back and forth between rage and sadness. I wanted to scream, but I settled for cursing loudly and repeatedly. I was mad at her for cheating on me, but I was also disappointed that she'd taken advantage of Beth like that. She betrayed my trust and hers at the same time. Something about that just made it worse. She was cheating on me on an old woman's bed. Irene got home just a few minutes after I did. She stopped at the door the moment she saw me. She could tell something was seriously wrong. I told her to come in, and she asked what was wrong. I didn't say anything, but she was asking if everything was fine at work. It was only until she got closer to me that I said, "I know about your affair." She started denying it, but I cut her off and told her about Beth's surveillance camera. She stared at the floor wordlessly for a few seconds. The tears were already forming in her eyes before she said a word. She said she didn't know what Beth thought of she saw, but she was mistaken. She said Beth had started forgetting things, so she was probably confused. I laughed. She was throwing her friend under the bus to try to save her skin. I told her to try again because I had the videos on my phone. I asked if she wanted to see them, but she didn't say anything. She just collapsed into a chair and started sobbing. I tuned out her apology. I could only listen to her repeat, "I'm sorry, babe," so many times before it drove me insane. I cut her off and gave her a piece of my mind. I called her some truly nasty names that made her cry harder. At one point, she begged me to stop, but I was too angry to stop talking. I called her a shameless slut for breaking our marriage and doing it in Beth's house. She was an old woman who trusted her more than anyone, and she betrayed her trust. I went into detail about how hurt Beth had sounded when she called me. By the time I was done, Irene was full-on ugly crying. I felt a lot better that I had been able to let it all out. I was glad to see that she was getting a sense of just how badly she'd messed up, but I knew she didn't really feel remorseful. She was just crying because she'd been caught, and she was afraid of what she'd have to face. How could she face Beth again after this? She could barely even look me in the eye. My thoughts were confirmed when she asked, "What do we do now?" I asked her which we she was talking about. There was her, and there was me. She would be leaving the apartment, and I would be filing for divorce. She actually threw herself at me, begging me not to leave her. She insisted that it wasn't a real affair. She'd met the guy online, and they only got together 3 times. She felt nothing for him. She was just bored and thought that would be exciting. I told her to stop lying to me and revealed that Beth had sent me 5 videos. I watched them all, and they didn't look like they were strangers from the internet. Not that it would have made it any better. I shook her off of me and stood up. I sent the videos to her phone and told her to take a look at her highlight reel while I packed her stuff. She was sobbing when I left, and she was still crying when I came back with a box of her stuff. She'd calmed down a little bit, but her face was blotchy. Her eyes were red, and her makeup was running. She looked awful. I dumped her stuff at her feet and told her to get going. She looked up at me and said she didn't want to leave. She mentioned one of my friends and asked if I could stay with him instead. I pointed out that she couldn't make demands and asked if she felt like it was a good idea to live in the same building as Beth. She thought for a moment, then stood up. She said she would come back after a few days and that she really wanted to work through this. I closed the door behind her without a word. Obviously, there's nothing to work through, and I've completely ignored all her attempts to contact. What she did was disgusting and honestly humiliating. I know the marriage is over, and I'm just looking for anyone who can let me know what to expect with the divorce. Also, I'd appreciate suggestions on how to make it up to Beth. I felt really bad for her as well. An old woman like that doesn't need to know that her supposed friend was committing infidelity in her household and on her bed. Update. I thought I owed you guys an update since there was so much interest in my original post. I honestly didn't expect my post to get so much attention. Reading through all the comments and messages helped me feel a little bit less alone in all of this. I especially appreciate all the advice and encouragement. It means more than I know how to put into words. So here's what happened since the night I kicked her out. She didn't come back, but she called and texted frequently. I didn't talk to her, but all her texts followed the same theme. I can do better. Give me another chance. It was too late for that. I have wasted no time in getting a divorce lawyer. The split was pretty simple, since we didn't have much tying us together. We didn't even have a joint account. We always said we'd open one, but we never got around to it. I made sure to visit when Beth got back. Based on the suggestions I got here, I went to her apartment with flowers and some groceries as a thank you and apology. She did her best to refuse them, but I insisted. It turned out that the poor woman blamed herself for what happened. It broke my heart to see. I had to assure her that Irene hadn't started cheating because she was house sitting. She'd just taken advantage of it as a convenient location to meet her affair partner. I made sure she knew that I didn't blame her for the divorce, and I appreciated her coming forward. The real problem started after the divorce was made final. When friends and family asked about the divorce, she'd been telling them that we grew apart. I was telling them the truth. She cheated on me. I spared them the details, but I wasn't going to cover for her. She didn't deserve that. Unfortunately, she didn't like being exposed as a cheater, and she decided to counter it in the most ridiculous way possible. She went around calling everyone we knew and told them that I was lying. She also accused me of faking a video of her cheating. She claimed it was someone else entirely in the video. She also implied to a few people that I was trying to cover my own tracks, that I might have been the one cheating. When I found out about what she was doing, I was pissed. I thought I'd gotten ahead of her with the truth, but she still found another way to twist the narrative. I didn't do anything drastic at first. I just made sure to spread the truth to anybody who called to confirm what she was saying. But it wasn't enough. Irene had completely gone off the rails. She made a post on Facebook repeating her lies and accusing me of lying to have an excuse to divorce her and damage her reputation. I had been holding back before, but I knew there was no other option now. I made my own response post. Unlike hers, I kept it short and factual. There was no ranting and no name-calling. I explained that my ex-wife had been caught cheating on me multiple times on camera. I added that the footage had been provided by a trusted neighbor whose apartment she had been house-sitting at the time. I added that I had 5 different videos of her bringing the same man into that woman's home, and that Irene's face was clearly visible in all of them. There was no question that it was her in the videos. The post exploded in no time. People started commenting, asking for receipts. I was hesitant to post the videos for a few reasons. I knew most of the people asking me to post them were just feeding off drama, and I didn't want to be their dancing clown. I've always hated internet drama, and I hated Irene for dragging me into this. I also felt like Beth had been through enough, but I wasn't going to let Irene get away with turning the story around. I compromised by posting cropped shots that cut out most of Beth's apartment. It was a bit tricky, but I managed to get a cut that sufficiently showed off Irene's face and the fact that she kissed this stranger and went into the bedroom with him. It was convincing enough for the people reading it, and the support for her disappeared completely. People tagged her, asking why she would lie if she knew there was proof. I wondered that myself, but I got my answer when she called me. She was freaking out and asked why I'd posted the videos. I told her that she'd forced my hand. Did she really expect me to sit back and watch her spread lies without defending myself? She told me that she'd sue me for posting a private video. I laughed and asked whether it was her in the video or not. If it wasn't her, then she couldn't sue me. Honestly, she wouldn't have much of a case either way because it was surveillance footage. That seemed to surprise her. She seemed convinced that she'd be able to sue me for breaching her privacy. I told her to talk to a lawyer about it. She said she'd sue me for revenge porn. That part was funnier. I told her to speak to a lawyer. Then I ended the call. I still haven't heard back from her concerning the lawsuit, and I don't think I ever will. A couple of weeks down the line, I heard from a mutual friend that she'd move out of town to stay with family. Apparently she needed a fresh start, which seemed to include deleting her posts and going dark on social media. I wasn't surprised. Based on the reaction to my Facebook post about her, she didn't have many friends left, and the few she still had knew she wasn't someone who could be trusted. If she wanted to reinvent herself, then she could go ahead. The further away she did that from me, the better. Moving on from a divorce isn't easy. I thought I'd have no problem with it, but the pain of betrayal sticks with you. I've been going to the gym to help me deal with the negative feelings, and it's been really helpful so far. Plus, I'm starting to get back in shape, which is a really nice bonus. I've started visiting Beth once in a while. She's a real sweet old woman, and I try to help her out with any handiwork she needs done whenever I'm around. She always tells me not to bother myself, but I can tell that she enjoys having someone around. I enjoy her company too. It helps keep my mind off things and reminds me to slow down and enjoy life once in a while. Besides, I'll always be grateful to her for coming forward. Irene was one of the few friends she had left, and it couldn't have been easy for her to tell me about it. I'll always be grateful for her honesty, and I'll pay it back, one favor at a time. She clearly thought she could get away with it and didn't care who she hurt along the way. She used Beth's kindness as cover for her selfish little affair, and then had the nerve to blame Beth's memory when confronted. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a moment of weakness. 5 times caught on camera? That's a pattern of deception, not a fling. It's obvious Irene had zero intention of being honest or faithful. She was living a double life, showing up to your marriage like nothing was wrong while sneaking around in a friend's home. You did the right thing by cutting her loose fast and not wasting time on her empty promises. People like Irene don't change. They just find new places to lie and hurt others. If you found out your spouse was cheating and the proof came from a neighbor's hidden camera, what would be your first move? Let us know in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on Our Space. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.